You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 132. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action today. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and I'm excited to share my stories and life lessons with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac. As I'm writing my book, one of the things that I keep reminding myself is that I can't simply put my head down and write. I need to continue creating content online and sharing on social media in order to grow my reach. That makes it sound kind of simple, and yet it's not so simple. Founder and CEO of Weaving Influence, Becky Robinson, knows exactly how to grow your reach. Weaving Influence is a digital marketing agency that helps authors and thought leaders launch books, build networks, and amplify their messages. Becky is launching her book, Reach, today. It's a book on how to create the biggest possible audience for your message, book, or cause. I found Reach to be a great read because it starts with the basics, but then Becky takes on a unique perspective on how to repurpose your content. And you know, that's a topic that excites me. Get ready for an information jam-packed conversation between Becky and I know you're going to walk away having learned some new tips and tools to help grow your reach. Hi, Becky.
Hi, Michelle. It's so fun to be with you today.
I am so excited to be chatting with you, and happy launch day to you. Such a big day. I'm so excited for you.
I have been waiting for this day my entire life, Michelle.
Oh, that's perfect. I don't think I have had anyone say that. I love it because I totally understand what you mean.
Yes.
Can you take a moment to introduce yourself to everyone? And then we are going to talk about this book that you've launched.
I would be happy to. So my name is Becky Robinson. I am the founder and CEO of a digital marketing agency called Weaving Influence, and we specialize in supporting authors and thought leaders in creating the biggest possible impact for their work. And the book that I am launching today is called Reach, Create the Biggest Possible Audience for Your Message, Book, or Cause.
And it is so good. I read it and I devoured it, really. That's how much I loved it, is I read it so quickly.
It is so amazing to hear that, Michelle, because, hardly anyone has read my book since it isn't out yet. And so to get that feedback is just amazing. I'm so glad that it resonated with you.
It was perfect. And before we recorded, you even mentioned that as someone who's familiar with a lot of what you wrote about in the book, I still found it helpful because it's filled with reminders that even if you do have platforms in place, what you need to be doing to nurture them.
I'm glad to hear that, Michelle. What I was really hoping as I wrote the book is that it would inspire people, that it would give people a vision of what's possible for them, and that it might help them renew their commitment to use their online influence to make a bigger difference in the world.
And, I will tell you that I had slacked on my emails and nurturing my audience for, I don't even want to admit it, for like 2 or 3 months. And yesterday I sent them all an email.
That is terrific. The thing is that we can all get sidetracked. And if you're willing to start again and show up again, you can very quickly reestablish those relationships and remind people of the value that you have to offer them. So you can always start something again.
So let's talk about the book, because I love that you take two sides, your offline presence and your online presence, and you show how to combine the two. So can we dive into that part?
Sure. So what I noticed really early on as I started to work with authors and thought leaders is that there would be a lot of people who would come to me and they had these amazing offline lives. Maybe they were a professor at an esteemed university, or they had published many books, or they were traveling around the world speaking. But then when you would go online, that real world expertise was not adequately represented. And what I began to feel is that that created what I call the influence gap, because the person may have amazing influence in their in-person lives, but they're falling short as it relates to reaching more people through their online presence. And a lot in the beginning of my company, I've been in business now nearly 10 years. And in the beginning of my company, I really viewed a lot of the work that I was doing with clients as helping them to close that gap so that they could adequately live their lives offline and online at the same time. And in doing so, increase the possibility of the number of people that they could reach with their powerful messages.
I love that. And one of the examples that you put out there that really resonated with me, because I talk about how being a guest on a podcast is very similar to being invited to a dinner party, is how you met all these people at Starbucks because you all worked from the same Starbucks, but it was a different relationship than if you had invited them to your home.
Yeah, so I think that what happens as it relates to that is a lot of times we meet people in online spaces and it's very surface level, and there's no way to continue that relationship beyond, just a tweet here or there. And, it's the same as the relationship that I described with those people at the coffee shop. You can keep surface level relationships in real life, in person, or online. And any relationship will have the possibility for deeper impact when you move the relationship to a different level. So offline, that looks like, going beyond kind of that surface level communication. And online, that looks like get someone from a social channel onto your website, convert them to your email list so that they can hear from you more regularly and you can stay in touch. And even better is take that take that online relationship offline and initiate a phone call, get to know someone. It's really the power is in having a relationship that's represented in both places.
And I feel like you and I are very representative of that.
Yes, I was thinking of that as I was telling the story, because you reached out to me, I believe, first through email and Instagram, and then we had a call to get to know each other, and then here I am on your show.
Yes.
So there's a huge benefit in, investing in getting to know people beyond that kind of surface level.
And I think that people don't do it enough. And I don't know if there's just an insecurity about it or if it's too much effort, but it makes such a difference, when you do just invest a little bit more time, because there's so many people that you then get to know. And I think as adults, I know that for myself, I feel like it's so much harder to make friends. We're not the 5-year-old on the playground like my kids who just go, "Hey, I'm Katie. What's your name? Can we play? Cool, friends." We don't get to do that anymore. And I'm a fan of doing it. I'm like, "Hey, Becky, I like what you're doing, what you're putting out there. Do you want to be friends?"
For sure. Well, I think there are a number of things that might hold us back, Michelle, and sometimes it's busyness. So one of the things I talk about in the book is how quite often if you're a beginner, whether you're a beginner to your business or you're a beginner to showing up in online spaces, or you're a beginner, at the earlier stages of your career, you might have more of that time. And, I think that one of the reasons why I was able to really form some strong relationships in online spaces is that when I first started to use social media marketing, I didn't have any specific agenda in mind. I wasn't building a business. I wasn't marketing a book. And so for those of who might be listening who want to grow their influence online more effectively, it really helps to start out with that beginner mindset. And when you're at the beginning, you have to reach out to people. It's kind of like if you're the new kid at school, you have to reach out. And that's exactly what I did in the beginning. And some of the most impactful relationships that have helped me to grow my business all started long before I even had a business in mind. One of the thought leaders that I talk about in my book is Dan Rockwell. He's a blogger known as Leadership Freak. And Dan actually initiated a relationship with me way back in 2010. And I was writing a leadership blog at the time, and he had just started writing a blog, and he asked me for a phone call. And I'll never forget, Dan was way farther ahead in his career than me, way better established in the real world. But he came to me humbly asking me to teach him what I could about showing up in online spaces and about using social media. It was almost as if he were purposefully like humbling himself because he wanted to learn and he wanted to connect and he wanted to grow. And to this day, more than 10 years later, Dan continues to add value to my life. I continue to support him. And it's just so powerful what can happen when you initiate that relationship with someone that goes beyond the surface.
I love that story. That's fantastic. And you also mentioned there's an email list that you subscribe to, and you will reply to the author, and he responds. I think you said, like, even on a Sunday morning, he'll respond to me, and it's personal, and it's him, and it doesn't matter what day of the week it is, and how meaningful that is. And I'm such a believer in responding to those who respond to you.
Yes. And I will say that I'm not always as good about that on my email list, even though I appreciate it so much from others. But yeah, Chris Brogan, he's a hero. So if you have not yet followed Chris Brogan in terms of relational connectedness and sharing value with people, he's a hero. And in fact, Michelle, I just responded to Chris's email this past Sunday morning. And again, I got a response on Sunday. So, you can count on him. It's that consistency of, he makes a promise to his email newsletter readers and he fulfills it. It's
I
powerful.
love it. Yeah, absolutely. Because then you also get the responses that are that powerful that, are like, I'm reading this and this is how it affected me, or I listened to your recent episode and this is what happened to me in my life. And it becomes powerful for both sides. It becomes a gift.
It sure does. And I would say to your listeners who may be newer to online spaces or newer to relating or newer as an email subscriber, those comments are gold to those of us who are creating content. We have the opportunity to see what you're interested in learning, to know what you're thinking about, and really to adapt and adjust to provide even more value for you. So please don't make the assumption that we're too busy or that we don't want to hear from you or that your comments or feedback don't matter. Because I think as a whole, those of us who are out there creating content in the world really crave that opportunity to know that it's landing and to create that relational connectivity. I told you when we got on the call, Michelle, that leading up to the launch of my book today, I spent a lot of time personalizing letters for people who were helping support the launch. And what was fun about that is going through the names. Of course, with hundreds of people signed up to help promote my book, I don't know them all, but so many of them, I see the names and I can recall an email that they might have sent me, or I can recall an interaction that they might have had. That's a powerful thing to be able to know and be known by others.
Absolutely. And I love that when you start off with, where do I start in the online space? You say to start with a website because it's your home. And I couldn't agree more, but let's talk about, why should a website be your home and how you relate that to, you want to drive them here and you want this clean and you want a message versus social media being your home.
Sure. So this is definitely something that I feel really strongly about. And quite often people will come to me and they'll say, well, why do I need to create a website? I've got, X hundred, X thousand followers on LinkedIn. And the reality is, if you think about online spaces and even predating my own entry into social media, which was 2009, think about MySpace. If someone had built their entire online presence on MySpace, they would have been very disappointed when it disappeared. Or suppose it was Google Plus, which for a while was all the rage and people were really clamoring to ensure that they were well established on Google Plus. Those channels change. Yes, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram have been around a while. They may be around longer. But the truth is that the people who run those channels are interested in their own outcomes, and they are not the same as the outcomes that you are interested in. So you want to be able to establish a place online that you own and control, that you can keep consistent over time, that you can update, adjust, adapt, and that can help people immediately connect to the unique value that you bring to the world. I was fortunate enough a few years ago to buy my own name as a domain, BeckyRobinson.com. There are definitely Becky Robinsons in the world more famous than me. But I was able to buy my name as a domain, Michelle, for $500, which, at the time felt like a lot of money and now feels like a bargain. Now it feels like a bargain. But at any rate,
my name wasn't that expensive. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I can spell your last name, Michelle. I need to get to know you a little better first before I memorize the spelling. um, but yeah, so if you have a complicated last name, it might be less expensive. If you have a more common last name, it might be more expensive. And it doesn't even have to be your name. But, buying a domain that belongs to you alone and beginning to help people understand the value that you hope to bring to them. Because then over time, you are in control of the story that you're telling about who you are and the value that you're bringing to the world. And, some of the objections that people have are like, well, I already have traffic on LinkedIn. That might be true. But again, as long as the relationship stays on LinkedIn, it will be at that surface level. And there's some commitment demonstrated when people are willing to leave whatever channel they're comfortable on and go to your website and find out more about you. So it shows a deeper interest. It shows a willingness to get to know you more. And then once they get there, what you want to do is have a compelling offer to get that person to sign up and subscribe and give you permission to market to them via email.
And, as you say that it takes more of a commitment to get to someone's website. I totally feel that because I've been going through a lot of prospect calls in the last month. And I've noticed that there are certain people who have gone to my website, who have looked me up, who I feel are more serious about working with me because they've taken that extra step versus just showing up for a call. So I totally believe that. And let's also mention, because you mentioned this in the book, the great outage of Instagram and Facebook last year.
Well, sure. So, at any given moment, those channels can crash, get overloaded, get, shut down by the government, can change their ways of functioning. I know several years ago, there was this functionality in LinkedIn where you could export your contacts with their email addresses. And, people who were counting on that as a way to stay in touch longer term with their LinkedIn connections were sorely disappointed when suddenly you could export your contacts, but no longer could you export their contact information. And so, whether it's that or whether it's that outage of Instagram and Facebook that happened for many, many hours on a fall day,
Mm-hmm.
there's no guarantee that the social platform that you love will be there tomorrow. But if you invest in building your own domain and growing your own email list, then you can ensure that connection to folks will be enduring.
Absolutely. Something else that reminds me of the book, you have icons in it. And I love the icons to remind us of, what point you're hitting on. And my favorite, of course, is the heart, as we were talking about before we started recording, because that's all about generosity. But you also talk about longevity, consistency, and of course, you said the diamond earlier, and now I can't even remember what it stands, the value, the wealth,
Value.
right? Yes. Can you share what those all mean and how they intertwine in the book?
Sure. So as I was working on the book, what began to emerge is common threads. So when I would look at someone who was being very successful in creating a larger audience to expand their influence and having a deeper impact with that audience, what I noticed is these common threads, these common factors is what I called them in the first draft of the book. And then as I began to refine the book, what I realized is it's not just a common thread, it's not just a common factor, it's a commitment that an individual can choose to make in order to maximize the influence of their work and life in the world. So the four commitments are, as you said, value, consistency, generosity, and longevity. And, it really all starts with a commitment to bring value. So you're not going to be able to grow an audience if you don't have anything valuable for them to pay attention to. And the content that we create is the vehicle for the value that we want to bring to the world. So you have to start with value. Once you have value, you need to make a commitment to consistency, and showing up consistently can help attract people to you. So no one's going to subscribe to a podcast that created 2 episodes and disappeared. If people see that you are consistently delivering value week after week or month after month, they will be more likely to follow you and listen to you. So you start with value. You commit to consistently showing up, And you need to do that over a long period of time. And so what I found as I was interviewing various thought leaders and authors, the ones who are having the biggest impact are the ones who have stuck around the longest. And most of the time, if you hear about an author with a best-selling book, it's not the first book that was the bestseller. It's the third or the fourth or the fifth. And it's because they have had this longer-term commitment to creating and sharing value consistently that they are able to achieve at that level. Now, generosity might be the most unexpected one because quite often people think that, they have to be careful of their content or they have to be careful of their connections. What I have found is that the opposite is true. So the more you give away, the more that you are able to expand your influence and make a difference with others. And I love just being able to see that in action every single day in my life and business. And so it is a commitment and a choice that you have to make. You have to choose to give away the best of who you are, and that draws people to you.
I totally agree. And I heard Amy Porterfield say the same thing years ago when I was first starting out. And I was like, really? Like the more you give away? And her statement was that you want to make people think, wow, you're getting all of this for free. So imagine what you would get if you actually paid this person. And that stuck with me. So I've tried to be as generous as I can with the knowledge that I have and, sharing. And this is what I do. And this is how you can do it too. And I think that's so important for everyone to just share freely without expectation in return. And that's actually how you will get something in return, I feel.
Certainly. And it's also how great ideas spread. So in the book, I tell a story about a guy named David Cooper-Ryder. And you may have never heard of David Cooper-Ryder's name, but it's possible that you've heard about an idea that he's helped to fuel in the world called appreciative inquiry. And when David created this idea back in the 80s in his doctoral dissertation, he had landed on this amazing approach that was very powerful in organizational development and nonprofits in all sorts of ways. And the reason why that idea has spread so much since the 1980s is that David decided that rather than copywriting or trademarking his idea, he would instead give people free license to use the idea and reshape it and reform it in whatever ways that they would want. And so as a result, the idea has been incorporated into countless books, countless programs, and has really had a worldwide impact over the past 4 decades. It's all fueled by that generous approach that David had to letting his ideas go out into the world and be used for the good of others.
Yeah, I loved it. I love that part because I didn't know who David was. So that was a new one for me as well. And the example just, it totally resonated with exactly that of, you give to receive, right? Essentially, I think that's what we're taught when we're younger. And we need to remember that as business owners as well. And in relating to giving, let's talk about email lists. And I have to say, I love, love, love how you word that you need to legally have an email list.
Well, yeah, that's a little tricky, isn't it, Michelle? I think all of us who have been out in online spaces for a while have been added to email lists without our permission, and it's irritating.
All the time.
So it's critically important that if you want to make an impact through your ideas, that you make yourself aware of all the regulations and laws, and by all means, gather email addresses in a way that is in line with those regulations and also is just the human and wonderful and kind thing to do. You are not going to get any value by sending emails to someone who doesn't want them. You will get value when people want to hear from you and open your emails and read your emails. So by all means, if you are going to start a newsletter, make sure that you are doing the kind and human thing and making sure you have people's permission before you send to them. And of course, you don't have permission just because you met someone, just because they connected to you on LinkedIn, just because they gave you a business card. None of those constitute permission.
Or just because their email is on LinkedIn, like you haven't even connected with them.
Oh my goodness. I don't know that I've had that happen. But I have stayed on some email lists and I have no idea how I got on them. And I have no idea why I haven't unsubscribed. But it's always so strange to me how that happens. And those are not the emails that I open. Those are not the people I buy from. The people that I whose emails I open are the ones I've subscribed to, chosen to be on, and they are more likely to get my time and attention.
Absolutely. I've also gotten the ones where if I send a pitch email, suddenly I've been added to their email list. I'm like, that's
Yikes.
not how it works.
Not at all. And
No.
it can be discouraging. And, people can think, well, I have a book coming out, or, I have a launch of a product, or, I need to fuel this nonprofit cause that I'm passionate about. So everyone will forgive me. They want to hear from me. No, it's not going to get you the outcomes that you want.
And make sure you have an unsubscribe option.
Indeed, that is critically important too.
I've gotten to the point where I remember there's one in particular who I was like, I am trying to unsubscribe and you keep emailing me. And I finally was like, do you understand this is illegal? What you're doing is illegal, because that's how frustrated I am right now.
Yikes. Well, beware if you're listening to us today.
Yeah, we're going to tell you the truth. We're going to make sure you don't get yourself in trouble. That's really what it comes down to. Let's also talk about, at the very end, you share who should write a book. So who should write a book?
Anyone who has a message can write a book. What I really hope that people know is that if you have that impulse within you, you feel like you have something to share, go in the direction of that. I would say, writing a book is challenging, and marketing a book is more challenging, and it will always take more time, money, and energy than you think. So it's a good idea before you write the book to think about building an audience for the book. I mentioned earlier, Michelle, that I joined Online Spaces in around 2009. And I have always wanted to write a book. I told you at the beginning of this recording that I've been waiting my whole life for today, the day that my book is launching into the world. And it's because I always, from the time I was a tiny little girl, loved books and wanted to be a writer. So that said, I view the past 13 years since I joined Facebook in 2009 until today when my book came out as being the most important preparation that I could have to write the book. If I had tried to write a book in 2010, I wouldn't have had anything meaningful or valuable necessarily to say. I thought I did, but it really took time and experience to hone my message and clarify my ideas until I could write the book that you're reading today. That said, go in the direction of the dream, know what you're getting into, and then also know that you are the only person in the world like you. And so you are the only person with those unique experiences, talents, ideas. And so you're the only one who can write your book. There is no one else in the world who could have written my book. I am the only one who could write my book, and you are the only one who can write yours.
I love that. And before I forget, because I want to make sure that we talk about this part, because it's my favorite, and I know you said it was your favorite, the repurposing part. This just, you can tell I'm lit up just talking about it, because I'm such a believer in repurposing content. And the way you break it down in the book is absolutely genius, because I only talk about platforms. You talk about how many pieces of assets can be created from one piece of content.
Sure. I'm happy to talk about this topic. Like I said, it was among my favorite parts of the book. And so what I would say to those of you who are out there creating, even if you have not created a book yet, any content that you create, whether that's written content, audio content, video content, social media, short burst content, anything that you create is a flexible asset. And you can reshape, repurpose, reuse it in new ways. And because you are looking to grow an audience, likely there is content that you've created in the past that your audiences have never seen. And the best way to get the biggest impact for your work is to adequately use and leverage and steward the content that you've been creating. Most of us don't need to create anything new, although I love creating new content, and I crave the times that I get to. But as Michelle, as you said, in the book, I talk about the way you can take one asset and repurpose and reshape it in different ways to create dozens of assets. And then I talk about, if you already have a book, the way that the book can also become a a variety of different assets. So I'll give you one example. Michelle, you and I, before we started recording, we're talking about a workshop that I love delivering. It's called the Reach More Readers Workshop. And if you were to look at the agenda of the workshop very closely follows the table of contents of my book. And so if you think about my book, my book became this other thing, brought to life, live and interactive. It became a workshop. Mm-hmm. When I deliver the workshop, we video record every single session. Well, each of those recordings on each of those topics are 10 new assets, 10 topics, 10 videos. If I were to take those videos from the workshop and translate them, transcribe them into written content, likely within them, there would be an article, there would be social media posts. Like there are 1,000 different ways that we can repurpose the content that we have. But the thing I want to make sure I mention, Michelle, is that in the book, I also talk about this really powerful idea of repurposing life. And Michelle, you wanted me to talk a little bit about who should write a book. Mm-hmm. The more authentic and real we can be about our life, and our life is this content that we have. That's the most powerful repurposing we can do, when we bring the best of who we are and what we've gone through in our lives and share it with others. So it's not only just about, kind of this technical, like let's repurpose the writing and audio content and video content and chop it up and put it out in the world. It's really most powerful when we can go back to the true essence of who we are as humans and what we have experienced in our lifetimes, and bring that and repurpose it into the content that we're crafting.
I love how you put that and that you mentioned it, because I'm a firm believer that everybody should be sharing their story. I know that, it doesn't resonate with everyone in wanting to share their story, because it might feel too personal. But at the same time, it's really what makes us each unique and fascinating. And I get a high off of being able to hear someone's story that is a complete stranger, and to go, oh my goodness, like you're incredible. And like, you don't even know it. You glean so much from hearing someone's actual story, what their childhood was like, how, their path veered and went in a different direction than what they were planning for or dreaming, or, what they thought it should look like, and just how incredible that is. So I completely agree that everybody should just write a life story book.
Well, and, there are different parts of our life at different times that we can share or feel comfortable sharing. But one of the things that stands out to me is that more you know about someone, the more memorable they become to you. So Michelle, when you and I first met on the phone, I believe you were telling me about how you worked. Was it like at an airport?
Yeah, I started at the airport, and then I sold jet fuel for 18 years.
Exactly. And even though I couldn't say that as cleanly and smoothly as you did, like that's memorable to me. So I start to build this picture of Michelle, and Michelle lives in California, and she started her career working with jet fuel, and she wanted more time with her family. You did, Michelle. So you left that workplace to be able to forge your own career. And it's those details of life that, as we're able to share them with others, really help people to connect in an authentic way with us and remember us. So there's no way I'm forgetting you, Michelle. Because every time we talk, I get more details. And so for those who might feel reluctant to share those personal glimpses of themselves in online spaces, take a baby step, because it's those kind of personal, authentic moments that will help you be memorable to your audiences and will attract audiences to you.
I love it all. And I love your book. I'm now loving you, Becky. So,
aw, thanks.
I'm so proud of you and excited for you and this book launch. And it's it's a worthy book, no matter what stage you're in, online, offline, you've been there, you've done that. It's the perfect book for whether you're starting out or you're 10, 15 years into it, because you will learn something from it.
Thank you so much for that, Michelle. And, I hope that your listeners will choose to buy my book. And one of the reasons is because you didn't see it in the galley that you read, Michelle, before the book came out. But in the finished book, at the end of every chapter is a QR code. And that QR code links to a free portal of online resources that you can use to go even deeper on your journey. Every interview that I did for the book was recorded and is available in that portal. And so if you really want to go deep and learn more, buy the book first and then come join us in the online course that's free. You're getting a ton of value when you buy the book because all those additional resources are available to you.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I didn't even know that. I saw the QR part, but that's incredible. I love that. So where can everybody buy the book?
Well, here's what I think. Everyone should go to beckyrobinson.com/book. And on that webpage, and I'm sure, Michelle, that you will put the link in the chat, all the online retailers are listed there. So I'm a big fan of independent bookstores. So you can go to bookshop.org, select your favorite independent bookstore, buy the book from there. Of course, all the other online retailers that you might expect will have the book. Actually, next month, if you're traveling, you might pick up my book in an airport bookstore.
I hope you start traveling and then go sign some.
I hope to. I think it's May that my book will be in stores. And so I'm hoping that I'll be able to get to the stores and sign the books. If you'd like a signed book and you heard this conversation with Michelle, you can feel free to email me, Becky@weavinginfluence.com, and I could pop a book plate in the mail to you so that you can personalize and have a signed copy of my book.
That's
only
amazing.
For Michelle's listeners today.
Thank you. There's the heart icon.
Yes.
Thank you. And here I am. Nobody can see me. And I just made the heart little thing that, Taylor Swift does with her hands.
Oh, back at you, Michelle. All the love on this call.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing the book and sharing all of your knowledge and expertise that you've gleaned over the years. It's impressive, it's useful, and it's needed.
Thank you, Michelle.
Friends, one thing I want you to take away from this conversation is to know that you can grow your reach simply by reaching out to new people. That's exactly what I did in meeting Becky. I found her company online and was intrigued by what they were doing. I thought it was great, but instead of keeping that to myself, I reached out via email to let her know that she was doing a great job and that I'd love to connect with her even further if she was open to it. I didn't have an ulterior motive other than wanting to make a new friend who's working towards amplifying voices in the same way that I am. It can truly be as simple as that. Whether you're just starting out with your website and social media, or you're a seasoned professional, I promise that you will learn something new from Reach. Go grab a copy today because any tool that you can learn from is one that is worth it.